If you feel drained around them, your soul already knows. Carl Jung. Your soul speaks a language older than words, and when it whispers, "Something is wrong here," it has already seen what your mind refuses to acknowledge. There exists within each of us an ancient knowing, a primal intelligence that Carl Jung called the wisdom of the unconscious. This inner voice doesn't speak in the language of logic or reason. It communicates through sensation, through that inexplicable feeling that washes over you when you enter certain spaces, encounter certain people, or find yourself in situations that your rational mind cannot yet understand. Jung once wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Today we embark on a journey inward, to understand why your soul recoils from certain energies, why your spirit feels drained in the presence of particular individuals, and how this ancient wisdom is actually your greatest protector. The feeling of being energetically drained isn't merely psychological, it's a spiritual phenomenon that Jung understood as the collision between conscious and unconscious forces, between authentic self and shadow projections. When you feel exhausted after spending time with someone, when their presence seems to pull the very life force from your being, your soul is not imagining things. It is recognizing something profound about the nature of human interaction and the invisible exchange of psychic energy. This recognition is not a weakness, it is a superpower. Your sensitivity to these energetic dynamics is evidence of your soul's intelligence, its ability to discern between what nourishes and what depletes, between what heals and what harms. Jung called this the transcendent function, the bridge between the conscious mind and the deeper wisdom of the psyche. But why do some people drain us while others energize us? The answer lies in understanding the complex interplay of psychological projections, unconscious patterns, and what Jung termed the collective unconscious. Some individuals operate from a place of unresolved shadow material, unconsciously seeking to fill their inner void by drawing energy from others. They may not even be aware they're doing this. Their psyche has learned to survive by becoming an energy vampire, feeding off the vitality of those around them. Energy, in the Jungian sense, is not merely a metaphysical concept, it's a psychological reality. Jung described libido not just as sexual energy, but as the fundamental life force that animates all human experience. When we encounter someone whose presence consistently drains this vital energy, we're experiencing what he called a disturbance in the natural flow of psychic energy. Your body is an exquisite instrument of perception. Before your mind can analyze, categorize, or rationalize, your nervous system is already responding to the energetic signature of every person you encounter. This is why you might feel inexplicably anxious around someone who seems perfectly pleasant on the surface, or why you might feel instantly comfortable with a stranger who radiates genuine warmth. Jung observed, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what happens when the irritation goes deeper than mere annoyance? What happens when someone's presence feels like a slow hemorrhaging of your own life force? This is when we must listen to the soul's ancient wisdom. The soul recognizes energy patterns that the conscious mind might miss. It detects the subtle signs of emotional manipulation, the unconscious neediness that seeks to fill itself through others, the unhealed wounds that project themselves onto everyone in their vicinity. Your soul knows the difference between someone who is genuinely struggling and someone who has made their struggles everyone else's burden. This doesn't mean we should lack compassion for those who drain us. Rather, it means we must honor the intelligence of our own psyche when it signals danger. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, requires us to develop healthy boundaries, to distinguish between our own psychological material and that which belongs to others. The energetically draining person often operates from what Jung called the inferior function, their least developed psychological aspect. They may be unconsciously seeking completion through others, attempting to fill their inner void by drawing upon the psychological resources of everyone around them. This creates a vampiric dynamic where one person's presence consistently depletes rather than enriches. But here's what's crucial to understand. Your recognition of this dynamic is not a judgment of their worth as a human being. It's an acknowledgement of incompatible energetic patterns. Some people are in a phase of their psychological development where they can only take, not give. Your soul recognizes this imbalance and responds accordingly. Jung's concept of the shadow, the unconscious aspect of personality that the conscious ego doesn't identify with, helps us understand why certain people feel so draining. When someone hasn't done their inner work, when they haven't faced their own shadow material, that unintegrated darkness seeks expression through their relationships with others. The shadow doesn't disappear simply because we ignore it. It finds ways to manifest, often through unconscious behaviors that impact everyone around us. The person who constantly complains but never takes action, who seeks endless validation but offers none in return, who creates chaos and then positions themselves as the victim. These are all manifestations of unintegrated shadow material. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Those who consistently drain others' energy are often trapped in their own darkness, unconsciously seeking others to carry the weight of their unprocessed emotions. Your soul's recognition of this dynamic is a form of protection. It's your psyche's way of saying, this person's unresolved material is too heavy for you to carry. This doesn't make them bad people, it makes them incompatible with your energetic well-being at this stage of their development. The energetically draining person often exhibits what Jung called inflation, an unconscious identification with archetypal energies that makes them feel either grandiose or perpetually victimized. They may swing between feeling superior and inferior, but both positions serve the same function. They avoid taking responsibility for their own psychological development. This creates a dynamic where everyone around them becomes a supporting character in their psychological drama. Your energy becomes fuel for their emotional volatility. Your stability becomes a resource for their chaos. Your peace becomes disturbed by their perpetual crisis. But here's the profound truth that Jung understood. Recognizing these patterns isn't about judging others. It's about honoring your own psychological boundaries. Your soul's wisdom is guiding you toward relationships that support your individuation process rather than hinder it. There's a profound difference between withdrawal out of fear and withdrawal out of wisdom. Jung distinguished between neurotic avoidance and healthy differentiation. When your soul tells you that someone drains your energy, it's not asking you to build walls out of fear. It's asking you to honor your psychological boundaries out of wisdom. The soul knows that not every relationship is meant to be sustained. Some connections serve their purpose quickly and then naturally fade. Others were never meant to be close relationships at all, but perhaps brief encounters that teach us something about ourselves or others. Jung observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This becoming requires us to be selective about the energies we allow into our inner circle. Your soul's recognition of draining energy is actually guiding you toward relationships that support your authentic self-development. This doesn't mean we should be cold or uncompassionate. It means we should be wise about where we invest our emotional and spiritual energy. The person who consistently drains you may be exactly where they need to be in their own journey, but that doesn't mean you need to be their emotional support system. Your withdrawal from draining relationships is not a rejection of them as human beings. It's an affirmation of your own worth and energy. It's a statement that your psychological well-being matters, that your spiritual development is important, and that you have the right to protect your inner resources. Jung taught that individuation requires us to differentiate between what belongs to us and what belongs to others. The energetically draining person often lacks this differentiation. They unconsciously expect others to carry their emotional burdens, to solve their problems, to provide the validation they haven't learned to give themselves. Your soul recognizes this dynamic and responds with fatigue, with a sense of depletion, with an inner knowing that something is fundamentally imbalanced. This recognition is not a flaw in your character. It's evidence of your psychological health. The wise withdrawal honors both your own needs and the other person's journey. By not enabling their energetic dependency, you're actually creating space for them to develop their own inner resources. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to stop being someone's emotional crutch. Developing the ability to discern between nourishing and depleting energies is what Jung might have called developing the transcendent function, the capacity to bridge conscious awareness with unconscious wisdom. This skill is not about becoming judgmental, but about becoming more attuned to the subtle dynamics of human interaction. Your nervous system is constantly reading the energetic signatures of everyone you encounter. Some people radiate a quality that feels expansive, inspiring, uplifting. Their presence seems to energize not just you, but everyone around them. These are individuals who have learned to generate their own inner light, who have done enough inner work to contribute to, rather than drain from the collective energy field. Others carry a quality that feels contractive, heavy, depleting. Their presence seems to create a kind of energetic vacuum that pulls life force from their surroundings. These are often individuals who haven't yet learned to generate their own inner stability and are unconsciously seeking to extract it from others. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what happens when one person consistently transforms in the direction of depletion while the other seems to gain energy? This is the signature of an unbalanced energetic exchange. The soul's wisdom helps us recognize these patterns before they become problematic. That subtle feeling of discomfort you experience around certain people is your psyche's early warning system. It's detecting incongruence between what someone presents consciously and what they're communicating unconsciously. This might manifest as someone who speaks about positivity while radiating negativity, who claims to want connection while consistently creating conflict, who asks for support while rejecting every suggestion offered. The soul recognizes these contradictions, even when the mind tries to give people the benefit of the doubt. Learning to trust this inner knowing is part of psychological maturation. It requires us to value our own perceptual intelligence, to honor the subtle sensations that arise in response to different people and situations. This isn't about becoming suspicious or cynical. It's about becoming more attuned to the complex symphony of human interaction. Jung viewed relationships as alchemical processes, opportunities for psychological transformation through the meeting of different conscious and unconscious patterns. But not all relationships serve this transformative function. Some relationships are simply extractive, offering little opportunity for mutual growth or genuine connection. The energetically draining relationship often lacks the reciprocity necessary for true alchemy. Instead of mutual transformation, there's a one-way flow of energy from one person to another. This creates what Jung might have called a psychological parasitism, one psyche feeding off another without offering anything of value in return. Your soul recognizes when a relationship has become extractive rather than transformative. It responds with fatigue, with resistance, with a deep knowing that something essential is missing. This recognition is your psyche's way of protecting your capacity for genuine connection with those who can engage in true relational alchemy. The person who consistently drains your energy often struggles with what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold tension between opposites and allow new possibilities to emerge. Instead, they tend to collapse into one extreme or another, creating chaos that others are expected to help manage. This might manifest as someone who swings between grandiosity and victimhood, between overwhelming neediness and cold withdrawal, between excessive dependency and hostile independence. These polarities create a kind of energetic whirlwind that draws everyone around them into their psychological turbulence. Your soul's wisdom guides you away from these whirlwinds, not out of lack of compassion, but out of recognition that true healing happens when individuals learn to contain their own psychological tensions rather than projecting them onto others. The alchemical relationship, by contrast, involves two people who have developed enough inner stability to engage with each other's psychological material without becoming destabilized themselves. They can offer support without losing themselves, receive care without becoming dependent, engage in conflict without creating chaos. Jung observed, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Those who consistently drain others' energy often struggle with this self-acceptance. They're seeking in external relationships what can only be found through inner work. Your soul recognizes this dynamic and guides you toward relationships that support rather than substitute for individual psychological development. When your soul recognizes someone as energetically draining, it's not just warning you about them, it's calling you toward greater inner sovereignty. It's asking you to develop the psychological strength to maintain your own energetic integrity regardless of what others are projecting. This inner sovereignty is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming conscious of your unconscious contents and integrating them into a more complete sense of self. Part of this process involves learning to distinguish between your own psychological material and that which belongs to others. The energetically draining person often lacks this differentiation. Their psychological boundaries are so porous that they unconsciously absorb others' energy, while simultaneously projecting their own unresolved material onto everyone around them. This creates a kind of energetic confusion where nobody knows where they end and others begin. Your soul's recognition of this boundary violation is actually guiding you toward greater psychological health. It's asking you to develop clearer inner boundaries, to become more conscious of your own energetic patterns, to take responsibility for your own psychological well-being rather than making it dependent on others' behavior. This doesn't mean becoming cold or disconnected. Rather, it means developing what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to remain connected to others while maintaining your own psychological center. This is the foundation of mature love, the capacity to care for others without losing yourself. The journey toward inner sovereignty often requires us to disappoint people who have become dependent on our energy. This can feel uncomfortable, even guilt-inducing, but it's necessary for both your own development and theirs. By refusing to enable energetic dependency, you're creating space for healthier relationship dynamics to emerge. Jung taught that the ultimate goal of psychological development is not to become invulnerable, but to become more authentically yourself. This authenticity naturally repels those who are seeking to use others' energy to avoid their own inner work, while attracting those who are committed to their own psychological development. Many people who feel drained by others carry their own energetic wounds, past experiences of being depleted, manipulated, or energetically violated. These wounds can make us hypersensitive to certain energetic patterns, while potentially blind to others. Jung understood that our psychological wounds often serve as both our greatest vulnerabilities and our greatest sources of wisdom. The person who has been energetically drained learns to recognize the signs of energetic imbalance with extraordinary precision. Their sensitivity becomes a form of psychic protection, but healing these wounds requires more than just avoiding draining people. It requires developing what Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to hold both vulnerability and strength, both openness and boundaries, both compassion and self-protection. The healing process often involves recognizing our own patterns of energetic exchange. Perhaps we learned early in life to give our energy freely to gain love and acceptance. Perhaps we developed the unconscious belief that our worth depended on how much we could give to others. Perhaps we confused depletion with virtue, exhaustion with love. Your soul's recognition of draining energy is often calling you to heal these deeper patterns. It's asking you to develop a healthier relationship with your own energy, to value your own vitality as much as you value others, to recognize that sustainable relationships require mutual nourishment rather than one-way depletion. This healing journey is not about becoming selfish or uncaring. It's about developing what Jung called differentiated caring, the ability to distinguish between healthy support and unhealthy enabling, between genuine compassion and psychological codependency. The process often involves grieving relationships that felt significant but were ultimately unsustainable. It requires recognizing that some connections, no matter how much we want them to work, are simply not viable for our psychological well-being. Jung wrote, "The most important question anyone can ask is, what myth am I living?" Part of energetic healing involves examining the myths we've inherited about relationships, love and service. Perhaps we've been living the myth that love requires sacrifice of self, that caring means being depleted, that healthy boundaries are selfish. As we learn to honor our soul's wisdom about energetic exchange, we begin to attract and create relationships that are genuinely nourishing. These connections have a different quality. They feel expansive rather than contractive, energizing rather than depleting, inspiring rather than draining. Authentic connection, in Jung's understanding, emerges when two individuated people meet, when two individuals who have done their own inner work come together without seeking to complete themselves through the other. These relationships become laboratories for continued growth rather than hospitals for unhealed wounds. The person who has learned to generate their own inner light doesn't need to extract energy from others. They can engage in relationships from a place of overflow rather than deficit, offering their genuine presence without depleting themselves, receiving others' gifts without becoming dependent. Your soul recognizes these individuals immediately. Their presence feels different, stable, grounded, authentically themselves. They don't create energetic whirlwinds that draw everyone into their psychological drama. They don't require constant validation or endless emotional support. They show up as complete individuals capable of genuine reciprocity. These relationships often develop slowly, organically, without the intensity or urgency that characterizes energetically unbalanced connections. There's a quality of ease, of natural flow, of mutual respect for each other's inner sovereignty. Jung observed that authentic relationships serve as mirrors for our own individuation process. In the presence of someone who is genuinely committed to their own psychological development, we're inspired to deepen our own inner work. Their emotional maturity challenges us to grow. Their authenticity invites our own. Their inner strength supports our own development. This is the gift of learning to trust your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange. It gradually guides you toward relationships that support your highest development rather than your oldest wounds. It leads you away from connections that keep you stuck in familiar patterns and toward relationships that invite you into new possibilities. The transformation often happens gradually. As you learn to honor your own energetic boundaries, you begin to notice that different types of people are drawn to you. Those who are seeking someone to drain find you less available for that dynamic, while those who are interested in genuine connection find you more accessible. Jung understood that psychological development occurs in cycles, like the seasons of the natural world. There are times when we're meant to be more open and giving, and times when we're meant to be more protective and self-focused. Your soul's recognition of draining energy often signals that you're in a season that requires more energetic conservation. This doesn't mean you're becoming selfish or uncaring. It means you're responding to the natural rhythms of psychological development. Just as trees don't apologize for dropping their leaves in autumn to conserve energy for winter, you don't need to apologize for protecting your energy when your soul signals that it's time to turn inward. These energetic seasons often correspond with periods of significant inner work, major life transitions, or times of healing from past wounds. During these phases, your soul naturally becomes more discerning about energetic exchange, more protective of your inner resources, more selective about where you invest your emotional energy. The energetically draining person often struggles to recognize these natural cycles. They may interpret your need for energetic boundaries as personal rejection, your seasonal withdrawal as abandonment, your healthy self-protection as selfishness. This reaction often confirms your soul's wisdom about the relationship dynamic. Those who are committed to their own psychological development understand the necessity of energetic seasons. They respect your need for boundaries during vulnerable periods, support your inner work even when it means less availability for them, and trust that healthy relationships can weather these natural cycles. Jung wrote, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Sometimes, removing these barriers requires us to create space between ourselves and those whose energy feels incompatible with our healing process." This seasonal approach to relationships allows for a more organic understanding of human connection. Not all relationships are meant to be maintained at the same level of intensity throughout all seasons of life. Some connections naturally ebb and flow, while others may be meant for specific periods of our development. Your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange helps you navigate these seasonal changes with greater consciousness. It guides you toward relationships that can adapt to your changing needs while steering you away from connections that require you to remain static or sacrifice your own development. As we develop the capacity to recognize and honor energetic boundaries, we must also be careful not to split the world into draining and nourishing people in a way that avoids our own shadow work. Jung taught that every projection contains a grain of truth about our own unconscious contents. Sometimes our recognition of someone as energetically draining reveals our own unintegrated shadow material. Perhaps we see in them the aspects of ourselves that we haven't fully accepted, the neediness we've repressed, the emotional volatility we've hidden, the ways we might drain others' energy without realizing it. This doesn't invalidate your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange. Rather, it adds another layer of complexity to the discernment process. True energetic wisdom involves both protecting yourself from genuinely draining dynamics and examining what these dynamics might reveal about your own unconscious patterns. The goal is not to become invulnerable to all difficult energies, but to develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to engage with challenging energies without being destabilized by them. This requires a combination of healthy boundaries and self-awareness, protection and compassion, discernment and openness. Some people who initially feel draining may actually be mirroring our own unintegrated material. As we do our own inner work, our capacity to be present with their energy may increase. Others may genuinely be operating from patterns that are incompatible with our well-being, regardless of our own psychological development. The key is to remain curious about both possibilities, while still honoring your soul's immediate wisdom about what feels nourishing versus depleting. You can explore the psychological dynamics at play while still maintaining appropriate boundaries for your own well-being. Jung observed, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But this understanding doesn't require us to remain in relationships that consistently deplete our energy. We can learn from these interactions while still choosing to limit our exposure to dynamics that feel harmful. The integration of shadow and light in relationship to energetic exchange means holding space for complexity while still trusting your inner knowing. It means being open to what these dynamics might teach you about yourself while still protecting your right to energetic well-being. As you learn to trust and honor your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange, you begin to develop what might be called energetic mastery, the capacity to maintain your own energetic integrity while still remaining open to authentic connection with others. This mastery doesn't mean becoming invulnerable or disconnected. Rather, it means developing the psychological strength to remain centered in your own energy while still being genuinely present with others. It's the difference between building walls and having healthy boundaries, between being closed and being selectively open. The energetically masterful person can recognize draining dynamics quickly and respond appropriately without becoming reactive or defensive. They can offer appropriate support without becoming depleted, engage in conflict without being destabilized, receive others' emotional material without taking it on as their own. This capacity emerges gradually through consistent practice of honoring your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange. Each time you trust that inner knowing about what feels nourishing versus depleting, you strengthen your capacity for energetic discernment. Each time you maintain appropriate boundaries despite external pressure, you develop greater inner sovereignty. Jung taught that individuation is a lifelong process of becoming more conscious and authentic. Part of this process involves learning to manage your own energy as a precious resource that deserves protection and wise investment. Your soul's recognition of draining energy is guiding you toward this mastery. The journey often requires you to disappoint people who have become accustomed to unlimited access to your energy. This can feel challenging, but it's necessary for the development of mature relationships based on mutual respect rather than energetic exploitation. As you develop energetic mastery, you begin to attract people who are also committed to healthy energetic exchange. Your relationships become more balanced, more sustainable, more genuinely nourishing for all involved. The draining dynamics that once seemed so prevalent begin to naturally fade from your experience. This isn't because you've become judgmental or closed-hearted, but because your energetic signature has changed. You're no longer unconsciously seeking relationships that repeat familiar patterns of depletion. You're no longer available for dynamics that require you to sacrifice your own well-being for others' comfort. Creating healthy, energetic boundaries is not about building walls, it's about developing the sacred art of conscious relationship. Jung understood that healthy boundaries actually enable deeper intimacy by creating a safe container for authentic connection. When you honor your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange, you're not rejecting difficult people, you're creating space for relationships that can sustain mutual growth and genuine care. You're refusing to participate in dynamics that ultimately serve no one's highest development. The sacred boundary is permeable, but not porous. It allows love to flow while filtering out manipulation. It permits genuine connection while blocking energetic exploitation. It maintains openness to growth while protecting against unnecessary depletion. Your soul's recognition of draining energy is often the first step in learning to create these sacred boundaries. It's your psyche's way of saying, this dynamic is not serving your highest good or theirs. Something needs to change. Sometimes the change involves complete withdrawal from certain relationships. Other times it involves renegotiating the terms of engagement, setting clearer expectations, or limiting the types of interaction you're willing to have with particular individuals. The key is to approach boundary setting as a sacred act of self-respect and other respect. You're not punishing anyone or making them wrong. You're simply creating conditions that support authentic connection and mutual well-being. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Part of what you're choosing to become is someone who values their own energy as much as they value others. Someone who creates relationships based on mutual nourishment rather than one-way depletion. This choice often requires courage, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that your worth depends on how much you can give to others, regardless of the cost to yourself. Learning to value your own energy is actually a form of spiritual practice. It's honoring the sacred life force that moves through you. The sacred boundary becomes a gift not just to yourself, but to others. By refusing to enable energetic dependency, you're creating space for others to develop their own inner resources. By modeling healthy energetic exchange, you're showing others what mature relationship looks like. As we come to the end of this exploration, take a moment to connect with your own inner knowing. Feel the wisdom that lives in your body, in your nervous system, in the subtle sensing that occurs when you encounter different energies. This is your soul speaking, and it has been guiding you toward wholeness all along. The journey of learning to trust your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange is ultimately a journey of coming home to yourself. It's about remembering that you are worthy of relationships that nourish rather than deplete, that support rather than drain, that inspire rather than exhaust. Your soul already knows what your mind sometimes struggles to accept. That healthy relationships are characterized by mutual enhancement rather than one-way extraction. It knows that genuine love generates energy rather than consuming it, that authentic connection expands rather than contracts your sense of aliveness. The people who drain your energy are not bad people. They're simply operating from unhealed wounds and unconscious patterns that create energetic imbalance. Your soul's recognition of this imbalance is not a judgment, but a form of discernment, not rejection, but wisdom. As you learn to honor this wisdom, you create space for relationships that truly serve your highest development. You attract people who are committed to their own inner work, who can engage in reciprocal rather than extractive relationship, who add to rather than subtract from your life force. This is not about becoming selfish or uncaring. This is about developing what Jung called differentiated love, the capacity to care for others without losing yourself, to offer support without becoming depleted, to maintain compassion while protecting your own well-being. The soul's journey. Toward wholeness, requires us to reclaim our energy from relationships and dynamics that do not serve our highest good. It asks us to be courageous enough to disappoint those who have become dependent on our unlimited availability, wise enough to redirect our energy toward connections that support mutual growth. Remember that every time you honor your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange, you're not just protecting yourself, you're contributing to the collective healing of human relationship. You're modeling what healthy connection looks like. You're refusing to participate in the unconscious patterns that keep people stuck in cycles of energetic extraction and depletion. Your sensitivity to energetic dynamics is not a weakness, it's a superpower. Your ability to discern between nourishing and draining energies is evidence of your soul's intelligence, its commitment to your highest development, its deep knowing of what serves life and what diminishes it. Trust this knowing. Honor this wisdom. Let it guide you toward relationships that inspire rather than exhaust, that generate rather than consume, that serve the sacred purpose of mutual awakening and authentic love. The path of individuation, as Jung understood it, is ultimately about becoming who you were always meant to be. Part of this becoming involves learning to value your own energy as a sacred gift, to offer it wisely, to receive it gratefully, and to protect it from those who would use it unconsciously. Your soul has been guiding you toward this wisdom all along. Every feeling of being drained, every recognition of energetic imbalance, every inner knowing about what feels nourishing versus depleting, all of this has been your psyche's way of teaching you about the sacred art of conscious relationship. The journey continues, the healing deepens, the wisdom grows, and your soul in its ancient knowing continues to guide you toward connections that serve your highest development and most authentic expression. As Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Trust your soul's wisdom about energetic exchange and let it guide you toward relationships that support this sacred becoming. If this reflection spoke to your soul, subscribe. You are not alone. The journey is just beginning.